thumbnail. I was like, I don't know if I was mid blink. I don't know if I'm just tired. I might just be tired and jet lagged. But I'm like, in the thumbnail, I'm like, you know what? We'll keep it. So, hi, hello, welcome back, or welcome. Um, so what I'm gonna do today, hopefully, real quick, because I do gotta go to work, and I will hopefully only be live for like 40 minutes. Because I gotta get ready for work. I am going to use a lot of known animal spirits. Today is the new moon in Aquarius, Lunar New Year. From the, was it the wood rabbit or the water rabbit? From the rabbit to the wood dragon. I feel like, well, maybe it was the wood rabbit. Because I think they go through the element. I honestly don't know. I have the wild unknown animal spirits, the tiger and the fire ants. Um, I'm gonna pull before and after the rabbit, and then I'm gonna pull before and after the dragon. Before the rabbit is going to be, oh, I guess I didn't think about that necessarily. Before the rabbit, I'm gonna pull, or before the card, I'm gonna pull a wild unknown alchemy card with Melanosis Darkening, number 12, and Spiritus Rector Benevolent Guide at the bottom of the deck. Darkening with the Benevolent Guide is interesting. It reminds me of darkening the light, the dark that protects the light, the cave that protects the campfire from the rain to keep someone warm, dry and warm. And then after, I'm going to pull a Star Dragon card. So we'll get a dragon and we'll get an alchemy. And I was like, oh, I didn't really think about it because well, it's fine. Because then it's more about how the previous Lunar New Year, sort of what the energy was, but also how it helps us moving into this year. I was watching the last live back last night before I went to bed, and I watched the first part of it, the part where the King of Cups and the Queen of Cups came out with the Two of Cups. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh, there's so much water here, which was interesting because there was no water at the end of it. So there was something else I was going to say or mention, but it's fine. Yeah. All right. Oops. Well, oh, wow. So I cut the deck to the wolf and the dragon. And then when I was about to pick it up, the wolf fell aside and it revealed the buffalo. I'm like, ooh, okay. All right, all right. I feel like that happened last time. There's also something interesting that I've noticed in my own collective world. So there's like, for me, there are things that I see, feel, witness, experience personally. There are things that happen in like my personal circles, and then there are like greater, grander, collective, like out in the world types of things. And it's not that there isn't any overlap between them, but that's kind of sort of how I notice them. And in my personal circle, yesterday, it's like the New Year's resolution-y type energy. It's almost like a new year is starting now. Now, for the people who were talking about it, I wouldn't necessarily assume that they're super aware that like Lunar New Year, right? In terms of like celebrating a new year or taking a new year approach now. But in terms of health, it's like I see one of my friends post on Facebook about um, starting to like work out. And then it's all around working out. And then I go into work and one of my coworkers is talking about how they're going to start like eating healthier and working out. And then there's another coworker that I have that is no stranger to fitness and stuff like that. So, they were like, hey, like, when are we going to go work out together? And so he's stepping up into this kind of coach role, which is interesting because he's someone there that has the knowledge and information in my personal sort of circle that is there to step up for those in my personal circle who is like coming into that. Like, they're not calling it a New Year's resolution, but it just like it kind of has that energy because it's like, why all of a sudden in the middle of February are we like, is everybody, not everybody, but why is it a thing on the same day that everyone's talking about like working out? And then here's like the fitness coach guru who's done his research and stuff like that. That's like, yeah, I'll help out. Anyway, it's there. The resources are there. And it reminds me of that. The energy came up in that last reading. The scientists remind the world that clean energy is ready whenever. Solutions that already exist for problems, maybe not problems, solutions that already exist for things that we want to see made different in the world and within our personal lives. Eve, I was going to text you when I got back and I was going to be like, oh my gosh, Eve, how was your trip? I was going to text you because I think we were in the sky at the same time. Because I'm pretty sure I was on my way back when you said that you were going back. And then you popped into my mind last night. And I did. I didn't text you, but hi. How are you? You've been on my mind. I hope you're doing well. I did get to click into the Taurus reading that was posted today. Dragonfly at the bottom of the deck. Okay. Oof, that's 7 minutes out of the 40 that I have. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to pull from the top of the deck. The Lamb is the first card. The Lamb, the Earthworm, the Sea Serpent. So we have like the Earthworm and the Sea Worm, but the Sea Worm is a lot bigger than the Earthworm, giving me almost turtle energy. How if you judge a turtle by its ability to move across land, you would not correctly be able to gauge how quickly it moves through the water, which is similar to it's not necessarily wise to judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, or a dog on its ability to fly, or a bird on its ability to swim. But this sheep year, because we're talking about Lunar New Year's, the lamb, the sheep, the next sheep year is 2027. The last one was 2015, which is interesting. It was great and awful. No, I also had a bit of a spectrum experience in terms of like what we saw and witnessed and experienced. Because at the beginning of our trip, it was like, oh, like things are one way. I don't know why everyone is like, and then on the first part of the second half of our trip, it was like, oh, okay, we see it. we hadn't seen it ourselves. We hadn't experienced it, so we didn't know until we knew. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's real out here. It's real. It's real life. But overall, it was still amazing. I had a good time. I'm sure my mom did too. But I was afraid about how I might adjust, but I've already experienced being outside my comfort zone and doing things that I wouldn't typically do. Because I was talking to my friend and he was like, your mom's reaction to some things reminds us of like him and his wife. Reminds us of like your reaction when we went around Michigan and like we were doing all this stuff. And then when we stayed in the woods and I was like, yeah, okay, that's fair. I don't know. It was, see, it's not about this, but I guess I'll talk about it a little bit real quick. Um, this trip was the perfect segue from my word for 2023 into my word for 2024. Um, and my 2024 word, it's coming in ways that aren't necessarily expected, but there is an element of the unexpected and the unknown in my 2024 word. Um, but so like it came in ways that like, again, it's like, oh yeah, this is an application of that word. But then it also came in ways that are much, much, much more obvious. And it was nice. And for me to witness me almost being in a new place as I am now, rather than like me going to a new place from the perspective of the me that had never gone anywhere different or new or had never experienced things or opened up to experiencing things. Um, and then even like, so when we were in Germany, we had a 10-hour layover in the morning. So we got on the S-Bahn to Marienplatz or whatever. I don't know why I said or whatever. But good morning, Holly. How you doing today? But like because I've navigated the metro, because I've navigated public transport in London, and because when we were in India, we got on the metro when it like when we were in Germany, and I was looking at like what do you do at a 10-hour layover in Germany in Munich? They're like, oh, you can go to this place. And I'm like, well, how do I get to that place? I looked at Google Maps to see like how far and everything. And then I went to public transport and it was like, oh, like it's one train that you take to get there. I was like, oh. And so we get over there. My mom is kind of like, well, like, what, excuse me, what do we do? How do we get there? Where do we go? And I'm like, we follow the signs and there are signs for everything. And now I can read signs because I got my cataracts fixed. Before I couldn't see anything. So like we're following the signs because I did the research. Like I knew generally what I was looking for. And I noticed like a DB like on everything. And so when we're leaving the airport and I see the kiosk that says DB, I was like, oh, that's where we get the tickets. So we got the tickets, everything worked out. We kept following the signs because my mom's like, where do we go? How do we know where to go? Should we ask somebody? And I was like, yeah, we could ask somebody or we could just keep following the signs. And we followed the signs. We got where we were going. It all worked out. We got to Marienplatz. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was a moment. It was an experience that I got to have with my mom. It's like I got to, for me and my own experience, be a lot more comfortable and navigate and do things instead of just in the airport for 10 hours. I was like, if I'm going to be in Germany for 10 hours, I want to be able to say that I like saw Germany, at least some of Germany. I want to get out of the airport. And so it helped me sort of like not be overwhelmed by the newness of the experience. And it helped me stay more in the moment and just like present with the company I was with and appreciating those moments. But then I got to share that with someone else who was having the experience with me, my mom, and it got to like broaden both of our experiences. And I was more comfortable in doing stuff because I'd done it before. Not in the same place, not in the same language, but I'd done it before. So there's a lot of German in Munich, but there's also a fair amount of English. There was a lot of English in Kolkata, but there was also like Hindi and Bengali, but like English was on signage, a lot of signage too. Anyway. Oh, look at this. This is interesting. The earthworm, the sea serpent, the snake. Anyway. And then there's our friend, the scorpion. So we're already getting a preview to 2 years out with this sheep. Come on. I gotta go. But I'm not gonna rush it. We are well into this deck. This is how many cards we have left. This is how many cards, plus the 3 first cards that we've been through. We haven't seen either the rabbit or the dragon. Okay, goodness. This is how many cards we have left now. So we have the otter, the dragon, the unicorn. So the year of the dragon is coming out before the year of the rabbit, which is interesting. That could be like there are things that we're going to experience in this lunar new year that's going to remind us of things from the previous lunar new year, but it's going to put it in a new context. Or it's going to be like, oh, this is why last year I was guided to research this or meet this person or go here or go there. Like this is the reason why that thing happened back then. But without the context of now, we may not necessarily get it. Oh my gosh. The rabbit was literally the card at the bottom of the deck, and the only card next to it is the elephant. So there's no dragon for the rabbit because the card before is the alchemy, the card after is the dragon. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about this because now there's going to be a dragon for the rabbit. The rabbit doesn't have a dragon. It worked out. Cool. The golden egg is before that elephant, and then the tarantula and the dragonfly are before the golden egg. Golden egg, tarantula, dragonfly, tarantula, golden egg. It's giving me almost that the spear of yesterday, which was like, you use the spear to fish. You don't use the spear as a weapon of war. But it's if we didn't know that the spear was used to fish, then the dragonfly would hold that ancient knowledge, right? The tarantula is the spider, but it's the spider in a different way. Like the web of the tarantula isn't as sticky. The size of the tarantula isn't necessarily the same size as the other spiders. It's hairier. It has a different anatomy, physiology. It has different capabilities. So even though they look the same, they operate in completely different ways. And if the tarantula with its less sticky web and it's borrowing whatever nature instead of hanging from trees or putting the web wherever, if the tarantula were to try to operate as a spider, it would starve. It would be ill evolved and ill adapted to its own anatomy, physiology, and environment. So it could be like ancient ways of being, and then with the golden egg, like golden opportunity type breakthrough, something that like a matryoshka, it opens up more and more and more and more and more. The opening more and more and more and more and more energy is again sort of pulling on that. There may be things in this year that we go back to last year and we go like, oh, this is the reason why then I went through, experienced whatever, came across this. Like this year is going to almost do that. But the outer layer is going to be the rabbit. This inner layer is going to be the dragon. And then because we start with the lamb and the earthworm, maybe there's an energy that like after 2 more layers, we're going to have this lamb here. Between the lamb and the dragon is, I don't know, Chinese zodiac order. Between the dragon, hold up, wait. That said 2027. 2027. I thought it was 2025 for some reason. That's in 3 years. So between, oh my gosh, it's the snake. The snake that was immediately after the sea serpent. After the dragon is the snake, and then the horse, and then the goat slash lamb. Um, so this is something 3 years sort of in the making. And we do have the sea serpent energy. So this in and of itself is also interesting because it was that like you wouldn't judge if you see a turtle move on land and you assume that it moves at the same speed in the water, you would be incorrect. It's a fact. You would be. To look at something in one environment and situation and to project or expect the same exact behavior, response, speed, or environment in this particular case, it would be incorrect because the turtles are adapted to the water. Tortoises aren't. Turtles are. They're more aquadynamic, aerodynamic. They move through, and then because tortoises don't spend as much time in the water, they don't have to be aquadynamic. So their shells are a lot more like domed or whatever. If you put that in the water, then you're going to get all kinds of drag forces or things that I don't know about fluid dynamics. But with the streamlined shell of the turtle, they slip right through. Now the tortoise is again giving that tarantula spider type energy. The tarantula has evolved in a way where they look similar to the spider, but they're different enough that they have to move differently. But we get the earth of the earthworm into the spirit, but I'll call it water because it's the sea serpent, the spirit of water, primordial water. But with the snake coming right after that, we go back to the earth. This is giving me that as above, so below. It's like as below, so above, as above, so above, as above, so below. Or it's like that as below, so above. There's this weird, nebulous, random stuff that happens in the above that we're not necessarily aware of. And then there's this as above, so below correlation that brings it back down. Because it's like, why do we have to go from earth to spirit back to earth to get the snake that precedes the lamb? Because the worm isn't a snake, but it's snake-like. You could say it's snake-like, but it's not a snake. Anyway. So very unfoldy Fabergé, not Fabergé, unfoldy Matryoshka, like, oh, this is why, type of energy. So the alchemy of the otter, immediate, as soon as I pick up the deck, it's Mars, Aries, which is interesting because loving and playful, and Mars, Aries, so violent and aggressive and warlike that you would think that there's no overlap between these. The alchemy of the elephant. Ooh, okay. Alchemy of the elephant is every element is present on the table except for air, which is interesting. Water is the otter, spirit is the unicorn, fire is the elephant, the earth is the lamb and the earthworm. I thought something came out. All right, come on. I got 16 minutes. Come on, come on, come on. Oh, yeah, that is interesting. They burrow similar to rabbits. And the tarantula was before the rabbit. The spider was the spider was like right here. I saw the spider as I was doing this. I don't know if I mentioned it though. What was the spider next to? The spider is in between. Oh, it was next to the peacock. That's what caught my eye. The spider's next to the peacock. So like the spider is beautiful in its own right. The spider is well adapted in the master because the peacock was the master of the domain of beauty. the spider is the master of the domain of spider in its own right, in a way that the tarantula is not. So it also may not be super beneficial for tarantula to hold. It may not be super beneficial for tarantula to apprentice itself under the spider, to apprentice itself in a way of like becoming a master of that school. Are there things that tarantula can learn from spider? Of course. But it's not for tarantula to devote its life to being spider and living like spider and doing all this other stuff, because it does not have the anatomy, physiology, environment, capabilities of spider. It would not be helpful or beneficial. It would probably prove quite frustrating, and that would be a tarantula that would look at spider as this amazing, like pedestaled whatever, but like, why can I never be like spider? No matter what I do and no matter what I try, it never works out. I can't catch prey in my web. I can't manifest my web sticky, because it's not. And now we get the resin of the elephant, which is interesting because of the fire around the elephant's trunk. It's like if the trunk of the elephant came down and like continued to wrap around the fire, we would get the image of resin. Resin is number 38. Alchemy is number 5. Okay. Bottom of the deck is ash, Kenneth, but we also get autumn because ash slid. This is number 33. I thought this would be 33 for a second. 33 was in my mind when I was looking at the number. Bottom of the deck is number 33, and then 19, autumn. But ash and autumn, this gives me like remnants of a fire. Oh, and then there's the gray wolf of antimony, but it's in reverse. I wonder if the wolf that watches and the wolf that waits is moving. I also did see the wolf in here, of course, because I literally ran through the whole deck, because rabbit was at the bottom. Wolf was next to, I can't remember how interesting the position of wolf was, or if I just saw wolf and I was like, oh, hey, there's wolf. It's wolf. Wolf is next to, it's in between the shark and the beaver. And then there's the stingray before it. Wolf is in the midst of water, a whole bunch of water. And then the camel is after the beaver, which is that balance of water and fire. Or we could say that's when the water moves into fire because of all the water around the wolf. The wolf is in the water that was missing. Anyway, then we'll get, the dragon of the unicorn. And then we'll do our best. Okay. All right. What is the dragon of? I'm not going to take this dragon. Grief, accepting loss. This dragon made noise, but it didn't flip over. It just like disrupted things, but then it went like it stayed face down in the deck. But I was like, I'll see what it is. I'm not going to take it. And it's grief, which is interesting. I was on Netflix last night and I heard about Good Grief on Netflix, but it was popping up and I didn't watch it. But I don't necessarily know what it's about. But maybe that's a 5 of Cups energy that's like not gonna, like, no. The dragon of the unicorn isn't about grief, which is, I guess, interesting because in the 5 of Cups, in the Wild Unknown Tarot, there's a horse with its head down and the 5 cups above it. But this unicorn is looking straight ahead. So I don't know if that's going to be like, there's this magical, one of a kind, mythological, impossible thing. Impossible came up yesterday too, with the cheetah, the vulture, and the earthworm, which was like something, I didn't get fully into it, but it's like something happening. And maybe that's the power of Scorpion too, because Scorpion was like something that is so overwhelming that it pulls all of us into it. It can be good or bad. Um, we're so happy in a moment that we forget all of our worries, concerns, troubles. We forget all of the not great stuff that's happening in our life, and happiness becomes who we are. Or there's something that's so painful that it dominates the experience, and we forget all of the things that are going well. We forget all of the ways that we've improved. We forget everything that's happening and working out, because in a moment, pain is overriding the sensors in our body. Now it's interesting because there was also the peacock, which was the epitome of, which was the master of its domain. The peacock is the master of its domain permanently, but the sting of the scorpion is temporary. It doesn't carry the same demand for permanence. At the very least, like the scorpion sting doesn't have to be permanent, it can be temporary, but peacock is always and eternally peacock. That's why it is the peacock. If it weren't, it'd be something else. So it's interesting that the unicorn is here and that grief is not disrupting this, because if grief were to come in, this unicorn would turn into a horse and it would be face down. It would be in the Five of Cups. It would be missing out on everything that it is. And it's interesting because that's the one zodiac year that we haven't accounted for yet. The dragon and the rabbit are here. We've seen the snake after the sea serpent and the earthworm. The sheep, the lamb came out first. And the third animal is, oops, there we go. I just knocked my electric lighter onto the table. There's some, oh, so because of how I got this long electric lighter, and it actually fell with the tail end down here on the elephant. Up here is the otter, and then up here I set the lamb on top of it. So the lamb is the flame, the elephant is the fire, and then the otter is the apparatus through which both this energy is activated and the energy, because you have to turn it on and then you have to activate it. You have to do both in order to get the flame. If you try to activate it and it's not turned on, nothing happens. If you turn it on and you don't activate it, nothing happens. And it's also interesting because, again, this is an energy of electricity and fire. And we have this water, we have the fire and the elephant right there, but it's like, it's this otter and Mars, and there's lightning in this. It's the water necessary for the ignition of fire. Maybe it's a balancing element. But again, we had the camel that was on the far side of the wolf that takes the water into fire because it balances within itself both. It serves as the point of transmutation from one into the other in its mutability. But now here, if this horse, if grief were to disturb this, we would see the unicorn as the horse. I'm not going to pull a card from the Well-Known Tarot because I have 6 minutes. If grief were to disrupt this, we would see the horse. And so it's interesting because now there's this question mark in the year after this, because we're unpacking this golden egg thing that keeps unfolding more and more and more, right? We see how the rabbit, or there's going to be an energy in dragon, like this already happened. The lid is already off of the egg, but we don't notice it until something happens in dragon. And then we're like, wait, like this wasn't here before. Let's say it's, let's use the chakras because the rainbow is easy. And so we'll start at the base. So we're used to the egg being red, right? At some point, we moved from the root to the sacral. At some point, it became orange instead of red, but it's not until our attention is brought to it that we notice that it's orange. And we go, wait, wasn't that red? And then we see the red cap sitting to the side. And then we're like, oh, that's how that thing plays into this thing. So then we have the yellow of the snake that's already being foretold here. Oh, girl, hold up. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. We have the blue of the lamb that we know is coming. with the yellow of the snake, the green, which is the heart chakra, which is interesting because grief, the green is the one that's like, if we're in grief, we would see it as it is if we were grieving, because then it would be that Five of Cups horse. But because it isn't grieving, because it's in its magic, because it's in this immune to griefness of the unicorn, it might be easy to miss. But it's the same energy. It's a horse with a horn. It's a horse that's become more than just a horse. Cool. And here's another card that it like flipped up, but it's still face down in the deck. Who else is making noise? Trust, love, and friendship. So love and friendship is making noise where grief made noise, but neither one of them is coming out. Sometimes support systems can be amazing. Sometimes we have to be our own support system. They can help us from falling into a despair. They can pull us out of, they can help us exit grief when it is our time to exit grief. There's an appropriate amount of time to grieve that is determined by each individual person in each specific scenario and situation. To exit grief early is to risk carrying baggage that will distort things. It will turn the unicorn into the horse. It'll turn that smile upside down into a frown. But to stay in grief too long is to risk similar but different sort of circumstances. But sometimes a support system can help pull us out of grief when it is our time to exit grief. And sometimes we are our own support. Sometimes the divine is our support. Okay. There's a whole bunch of dragons making noise, but the dragon of the unicorn isn't revealing itself. So, dragon of the unicorn, please. I got 3 minutes. I'm going to read resin. I'm not going to read Mars in the otter. Hello? Don't. Okay, let's see. I'm doing it. One. There we go. I know how to shuffle to force a card out. Bottom of the deck is enlightenment, moving forward. And then we see the hermit's lantern right there. The hermit being the one that was in reverse. The hermit in reverse being the indicator or one of the key signifiers that there wasn't water in the second part or the second half of the reading yesterday, in the like collective energy, right? There's a whole lot of control that emperor energy is trying to exert to force certain perspectives and feelings and outcomes. But the Three of Swords, like, you can't control hurt, pain, loss, or grief, because when you try to, it controls you. That hurt, that pain then becomes the reason why you do what you do. You can't be open or vulnerable. You can't dive deep and whatever because you're hurt, and that's understandable. But it becomes difficult to have meaningful connection if you can't delve into the realms of vulnerability out of fear of being hurt. But you can convince yourself that you are and can, and you can try to control things in a way to mimic what vulnerability and significant, not significant in terms of importance, but significant in terms of depth. Of course, you can try to make something appear to be a certain way, but without that substance, it'll crumble. There's no water. There was no water in the Three of Pentacles as he was watering the grass. Like, nothing's coming out of it. And plants need water. Anyway, enlightenment is at the bottom of the deck, which is interesting to be the dragon of the unicorn. Because that's the thing. It's that enlightenment that keeps the unicorn from grief and from falling back, reverting back to the horse. Not that it's necessarily a reversion, But that's what gets the green egg of the horse to like come off. With that grief, it would be stuck. And with that being stuck, you would think it's the end. Oh, it doesn't open up anymore. There aren't any more eggs inside of this nesting egg. There aren't any more little women in this matryoshka doll. It's like, but there are. It just got stuck. And then maybe, it's fine. We ain't got to go there. So the dragon of the unicorn actually fell face down on top of the rabbit and the elephant like this, which again, almost it can play to that there's something in this year that's going to get us to go back and to realize, oh, the dragon of the unicorn is independence, carving your own path. As a literally, we see all of those ways that the tarantula is not the spider. You can't judge a turtle's ability to move through water by how you observe it moving on land. How the turtle is different than the tortoise and how they've evolved physically for what it is that they do. How for the tarantula to pedestal the spider and to make the spider its idol and master is for the tarantula to probably put itself in boundless frustration and irritation and grief because they're not the spider. And then how the unicorn is the horse with a horn. It's the horse that is more so, whatever. And then the dragon of the horse is independence, carving your own path. Love it. Interesting. Cool. I'm going to read it. I don't think I've ever seen this card. Also, it plays into the energy of Aquarius, being independent, carving your own path, being unique. And just because you're unique doesn't mean that you are incapable of working well with others or being harmonious. We don't all have to be the same in order to get along. But anyway, independence, carving your own path. Constellation is Cephas. The star is Alderman Alpha Cephi. Cephas is a sea monster. Isn't Cephas a sea monster? Or Cepheus? I'm pretty sure Cepheus is a sea monster. And then we have the sea serpent here. Cepheus. Maybe not. Cepheus was the king of Ethiopia. He was married to Cassiopeia and was the father of Andromeda, both of whom are immortalized as modern-day constellations along with Cepheus. Andromeda was the one who was Kraken, not Kraken, but like the Greek Kraken that Perseus, I think, had to rescue. A member of the entire Sky Saga, which involves jealous gods and mortal ghosts. Oof. Okay. Greek mythology, Cepheus represents the mythical king of Ethiopia, Ae, and husband to the vain queen Cassiopeia. This also makes him the father of the lovely Andromeda. Oh, come on. Cepheus in Egyptian mythology is a crowned king in royal robes whose foot is planted on the pole star Polaris. Interesting. He was the son of Belus, king of Egypt, husband of Cassiopeia, and their daughters Andromeda. So the same. I'm trying to see Andromeda though. Oh, that's not what I wanted. What? Cepheus also has the hyperluminous quasar S5 0014 plus 81, which hosts an ultra-massive black hole in its core, reported at 40 billion solar masses, about 10,000 times more massive than the central black hole of the Milky Way, making this among the most massive black holes currently known. Cool. Andromeda. It was like the Kraken, but it wasn't the Kraken. Perseus finds her as he is coming back from his quest to decapitate Medusa and brings her back to Greece to marry her and let her reign as his queen. He used the head of Medusa to defeat the sea monster Cetus. That's who I was thinking of. Cetus is the sea monster. Uh, Poseidon sends the sea monster Cetus to ravage the coast of Ethiopia as divine punishment. Oh. Oh, so it was like any huge sea monster. In ancient Greece, Ketos, Latinized as Cetus, is any huge sea monster. According to the mythology, Perseus slew a Cetus to save Andromeda from being sacrificed to it. The term cetacean for whale derives from Cetus or cetacean. I don't know if it's a hard C or a soft C, but the whale is literally here. I just saw the whale. The whale is here between the swan and the tiger. It was the tiger that caught my eye to the whale because obviously, year of the tiger was I don't know when, but we have this Cetus here, the sea serpent. But this sea serpent is the key in seeing the earthworm as the snake, or this sea serpent is part of the earthworm snake. The snake is after the dragon. It's the dragon and then the snake and then the horse. There's something about the coming years where it's almost like things will not be as they seem to be. Things will not be as they appear. We don't get the horse, we get the unicorn, which is like the horse. We didn't get the lamb is straight out. The lamb is what the lamb is. The lamb came out as the lamb, which is the sheep. Now, on my Wikipedia, or not Wikipedia, on the Google that I pulled up, it lists the lamb as the goat. I know they're interchangeable. So when I see goat, I know that's the year of the sheep because previous knowledge tells me that they're interchangeable. Hey, Kirsty, how you doing? Previous knowledge tells me that they're interchangeable. But the snake was preceded by two snake-like creatures that aren't the snake. The horse is represented as something that's like a horse, but it's not a horse. The tarantula came out close to the rabbit as something that's like the spider, but not the spider. And then we have that dragonfly that's there as well. Maybe that plays into the dragon of the year of the dragon, carving your own path. So now it's giving me video game MMO specialization. Right? It's like if you have, I mean, plenty of people are specialized. So, like, let's say that you're a healer, but you specialize in the modality of like Reiki, right? So there's a need to be able to. 2022 was the thank you, Holly. I was like, I'm pretty sure we just had a tiger year, but I don't have the time to Google it because I'm already 7 minutes over, 9 minutes over. The independence of this unicorn. But what's also interesting with the dragon being the unicorn is that the unicorn is a fabled mythological creature. You don't see unicorns as you see the horse. You don't see sea serpents as you would see the snake. So it's almost like, I wonder if this is that above, mysterious, whatever. As below, so above, something happens above. As above, so below. The above is the space of like miracles and stuff like that. And in that same vein, if our view of the otter is playful, fun, innocent, joyous, but we see the aggression and the violence and the warlike nature of Mars, we wouldn't we wouldn't make this correlation. We wouldn't see this Mars as otter if our definition of otter is super narrow. And maybe our definition of otter is so narrow because we've had an experience that makes otter a safe energy. It's like the yin and the yang. And I've done a reading for somebody one time where the yin and the yang came out in a way where it's like there is black and there is white, there is feminine and there is masculine. And it's our inability to see certain things as feminine that make us characterize it as masculine. So it's like, the black dot that's in the white, like we see it as black because we attribute it to the black, but in reality, it's white. In reality, that is feminine, but it's the part of feminine that we characterize or attribute to the masculine for whatever reason. And so it's like there's something about that subtlety, that there's something about that misconception that will get us to completely miss something. Right? Like the tarantula and the spider. It's like, oh, well, the spider is the one that does this, not tarantula. So this is what is like, but no, this is tarantula doing this. That is feminine. That is the light. Sometimes the light can burn and sear and do a whole bunch of stuff that you may think is dark. Sometimes love is tough. Sometimes love will sit you down and have a conversation and force you to face reality because love wants to see you happy. And sometimes to see you happy, some things have to be done. And it's not like, oh, you hate me because you're not whatever. It's like, no. And that's the thing about grief. When we have completed our residency in grief, we exit it. If we leave early, there's baggage. If we stay way too long, there's baggage. But there is this golden window of like, it's okay. Like, you're done. You don't have to grieve anymore. You can move on. But sometimes we're not ready to be done grieving, even though our time of grieving is over. And sometimes it's because of what we think that might mean about the thing that we're grieving. Like, what does it mean if I move on? Does it mean that I hold this thing or this person in lesser importance? Does it mean that I don't care about them anymore? And it's like, no, it doesn't mean that. It means that it's time for you to move on with your life. And it's time for you, as the sun comes out, it means that it's time for you to, what was moving forward, enlightenment, moving forward. It's time for you to move forward. And it doesn't mean that something wasn't important. It doesn't mean that was impactful. It doesn't mean that you're betraying the memory. You honored them. You honored it in your time of grief. But that cannot be the rest of your life. I mean, it can be because we have free will. So I'm going to read resin and then I'm going to hurry up and get off of here. The resin of the elephant. This is number 38. Resin, holding, adhering, surrounding, as the trunk of the elephant surrounds the fire. Cool. Holding, adhering, surrounding. Resin is a miraculous material. Speaking of miracles, it offers both stability and transparency. For centuries, sculptors and archivists have used it to capture an object in time and place, preserving it for observation or adoration. Envision a delicate insect or flower suspended in a paperweight. Such is the alchemical energy of resin. Its qualities are protective, sealing, and hardening. When this card appears, there is a holding that's occurring, either literally or psychically. While well-intended, someone may be limiting the one they wish to protect. There may be an aspect of nostalgia at work in the laboratory, an unwillingness to let go or change. On the other hand, the resin card can indicate preservation of that which is most valued, a return to what's been lost. Literally the last 5 or so words. A return to what's been lost. That's the dragonfly. Cool. But if we treat this tarantula as the spider, we'll never see it. The spear will always be a weapon. We'll never use it to fish, even though we weren't taught to fish. And maybe you're using the spear to fish, and someone's like, "What are you doing? You're not using the spear in the right way. If you want to fish, you got to use a fishing rod." And you're like, something about this feels right to me. I'm going to keep doing it this way. Lo and behold, that's what the spear was originally intended for. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's using spears to fish. And it's like, those who ridiculed you are blah. We ain't even got to make it all about all that, because it's not about all that. It's not about any of that. Grief is not here. Grief came out to try to disrupt this, but it was met with the force of love. Now, enlightenment is here at the bottom of the deck, moving this forward as there's this path, carving your own path and moving forward along your own path. The horse that becomes the unicorn, which is, and that came out in the peacock and the nightingale yesterday. There was that version. It's like, it's a unicorn that's always been a unicorn, but it would shave off its own horn in order to fit in with the horses. But one day, unicorn's like, you know what? I'm going to let my horn grow. I don't care if I'm a little weird or the ugly duckling or whatever. I'm going to let it grow. I'm going to be brave enough to carve my own path, and then courageous enough to follow it. And then that person, the unicorn, becomes this mythological, imagined, but always there thing. There was something else. The coach in my friend circle, the person with the knowledge, with the information, who was always there. But now people are in a point and position in their lives that they're ready to go to him for his knowledge. And if he's helping, he's like, yeah, I'll help you out. Like, we can go together. He's not one of those coaches that's like, oh, you didn't appreciate me when I was here before, so no, I'm not going to help you. No, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Ha, ha, ha. Look at you. I was right. You were wrong. Girl, toxic, nasty. Not toxic, understandable. For the ostracized, for the one who was outside, for the one who was othered, it's understandable. And there is no judgment on that. At that point, it's all human emotion. And it's valid. But it's also sometimes a matter of like what we want and who we want to be. And there are actions that come with consequences. If that is a result, like, there are things that aren't going to happen, obviously. If you're not going to help somebody, then you're not going to help somebody. So the potential to form a meaningful, impactful relationship with that person is non-existent, because you're not open to it. And it's not the right thing or the wrong thing. It's just not going to happen. And maybe it's not for you to help, right? Maybe it's not for you to have a meaningful, impactful relationship with that person, because maybe that person isn't the type of person that is capable of having a meaningful and impactful relationship with you, because they're just trying to use you. Discernment. Not everything is whatever. The spider and the tarantula. And even within our own lives, certain things can be something and other things can be something else. Not everything is one size fits all. It's the individuality of the dragon, of the unicorn, and what better dragon to come out with unicorn than the individual carving your own path. Cool. All right. Thank you, Kirsty, Holly, E, for being here. I got to go. I am 18 minutes over. Oof. I hope you all have an amazing whatever want to receive this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. Happy new moon in Aquarius. Happy Lunar New Year. May the dragon be good to you. May all of the learned wisdom of the path, may all of the learned and acquired knowledge of the past unfold into wisdom to carry you forward through to the unseen, miraculous, seemingly disconnected, but very much so there in present future. So that your now moment will be, crazy, fun, cool, sexy, whatever.